Is everybody ready? 2-minute warning.
Remember for votes to turn your cameras on so I can see you raise your hand, please, commissioners.
Is everybody ready? Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hereby call this remote meeting of the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission to order. This meeting is being recorded as well as streamed live for the public. Mr. Smith, do we have a quorum today?
Yes, Chair Hart, you're present. Commissioner Rush is present. Commissioner Farrar-Dyke is present. Commissioner Lobby is present, and I believe Commissioner Al-Khatib is on here as well.
Can you confirm that?
Yes, I am present.
Okay,
He
great.
is
Thank you.
present.
All right, thank you, Mr. Smith. We will start today with our safety message from the WMSC's Emergency Management Specialist, Richard David. Mr. David?
Thank you, Chair Hart. I'd like to take a moment to explain the importance of the safety message and why we do them. Starting a job task or meeting with a safety message can help prevent an accident, injury, or even death. When we go out into the Metro Rail system, this briefing covers roadway worker protection, protective gear, and other hazards. When we're in a meeting environment, this includes emergency exits, defibrillator locations, and who will help with first aid or CPR if needed. You do not need to limit the safety step to work-related events. Just mentioning to children what to be careful for before you start cooking or doing projects together achieves the same goal. Consider talking about any allergies people have if you're getting together for the holidays. If you fly or take the railways, pay attention to the safety briefings. Even if you're just meeting up with a couple of friends, something simple as saying, "Don't drink and drive," can go a long way. Stay informed, stay healthy, and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. David. We will now move on to the minutes from our last meeting. Secretary Treasurer Farrar-Dyke, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. The minutes of the November 15th, 2022 meeting were posted for your review. Are there any additional corrections or additions to the minutes? I move approval of the November 15th minutes as circulated. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Lobby has seconded the motion. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay.
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 Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Commissioner Al-Khatib, how did you vote on that?
Yay.
All right, well, yay, okay. The motion, the vote is 5-0 and the motion carries. Commissioner Faraday.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Next item on our agenda is public comment. We provide an opportunity for public comments at each of our meetings, and we will now ask if any members of the public who have joined our Zoom webinar would like to speak. If so, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom, and our staff will unmute one person at a time. Each person will have a maximum of 2 minutes. I will pause now to see if we have any public comments. While we're waiting, I'd also like to remind everyone, including those of you watching on YouTube, that you can always report any concerns through our website, WMSC.gov, through our social media channels like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or by email. Ms. Minor, do we have anyone who has indicated that they would like to speak today?
No, I see no hands.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Minor. We will now continue with the next agenda item, which is my remarks. Our meeting today includes updates on the WMSC's ongoing safety oversight activities, including the status of Metro Rail's response to our order related to the 7000 series rail cars, our oversight of Metro Rail safety certification process, and other actions that we are taking to ensure that Metro Rail continuously improves the safety of its system. For Metro Rail to achieve this goal, it must ensure that its leadership maintains existing progress and makes clear that following Metro Rail safety procedures is critical to the safety of passengers and personnel. Achieving our common goal of safety requires truth, transparency, and proactive steps by Metro Rail that are focused on safety. Dr. Mayer, do you have any opening remarks today?
Yes, good afternoon, I do. We continue our hard work overseeing Metro Rail's 7000 series return to service plan and participating in the derailment investigation. This includes data review and analysis. We continue to raise and discuss specific items related to the return to service plan data and whether Metro Rail is fully considering and acting upon this data. For example, our analysis of Metro Rail's vehicle track interaction data demonstrates differences among rail cars and among parts of the system that present opportunities for Metro Rail to act on trends to make further safety improvement. Metro Rail's plan requires it to conduct this and other analyses and action in a collaborative fashion through the Vehicle Track Working Group created under the September 2nd plan. This group has not yet taken significant action. We at the WMSC continue to follow a data-driven approach as specified in our December 29th order. We also continue to emphasize to Metro Rail WMATA's own commitments in its Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan and the safety management system laid out in that plan to utilize data to mitigate known hazards and risks. Metro Rail has submitted procedural revisions to its plan that include a more streamlined entry of data and the use of additional personnel to perform back-to-back and journal-bearing gap measurements. The WMSC provided timely feedback and provided Metro Rail with an opportunity early last week to clarify items. The derailment investigation is continuing to progress. As previously discussed, available data continues to indicate differences in different parts of the system and track infrastructure and variations among specific 7000 series rail cars. As always, this is just one element of our work. For example, we continue to provide detailed comments and concerns related to Metro Rail's latest automatic train operation activities. This includes questions about timelines, training, roadway worker protection, and the preparedness of not just the physical systems, but also the organization to effectively and safely operate what is a completely new system for most current Metro Rail frontline employees. Mr. Sahu will provide more details later in the meeting. As related to safety certification, we continue to oversee Metro Rail's activities regarding Silver Line Phase 2, including Metro Rail's compliance with the safety mitigations put in place to open the line. Regarding an item discussed at the last meeting, Metro Rail has now implemented its station overrun standard operating procedures. As discussed during the last meeting, senior Metro Rail leaders had at that time directed personnel to ignore the in effect procedure. Due to the WMSC's oversight, Metro Rail is now following its safety procedure. We will continue to monitor this implementation through our investigations team. This is just one other example of our safety oversight leading to improvements. It's also an example of Metrorail addressing a safety issue identified by the WMSC without the need for the WMSC to issue an order requiring it. Metrorail's safety management system, committed to by the WMATA board and the general manager in the WMATA's PTASP, requires Metrorail to identify and address these issues. And it should certainly not take WMSC orders for Metrorail to follow up on its procedures or to address known hazards. Of course, the WMSC will continue to take enforcement action if necessary. Moving on to ongoing investigations, our investigation of a November 16th event in which a train operator passed roadway personnel at excessive speed has identified that the train operator had worked 30 days straight. Many of these shifts leading up to this red line event involved extended and varying hours. As part of our follow-up on this and our continued oversight of related corrective action plans Metrorail is implementing, we gathered information related to Metrorail's train operator availability. Metrorail has far fewer train operators available than its schedule requires for operations. This includes Metrorail's decisions to operate fewer trains than were available in October and in November, prior to the Silver Line Phase 2 opening, and with the Silver Line Phase 2 now opening, and under Metrorail's plans for additional schedules beginning later this month. Metrorail has approximately 60 fewer operators available each day than the schedule specified. We are investigating several safety issues related to an evacuation of Gallery Place Station on November 23rd. Preliminary investigation indicates that Metro Transit Police Department and Metrorail Office of Emergency Preparedness personnel entered the roadway to examine an unattended bag without required roadway worker protection in place. MTPD evacuated the lower level platform and treated it as a suspicious package or potential bomb. Metrorail personnel stopped train traffic on the lower level platform. Metrorail allowed trains to continue on the upper level. MTPD and OEP personnel did not permit a rail supervisor to remain with them on the lower level platform, which contributed to a lack of communication with rail controllers responsible for that section of the roadway. MTPD officers used the ETS box to de-energize power without communicating with the rail controllers or the power operations center. Metrorail requires any Metrorail employee utilizing an ETS box to do so only in the event of an emergency and to contact the rail operations control center. The person de-energizing third rail power is not to leave the box until they have spoken with the rail operations control center. Investigative interviews have not established a reason the ETS box was used to de-energize power. In addition, this investigation demonstrates that Metrorail is still not recording all rail operations control center communications. Telephone communications with Rail 1, who leads the room on a given shift, are not recorded when the ROC is operating from the Jackson Graham building, Metro's former headquarters. Phone calls to and from this number are also not fully tracked. This was found not only for this event. Follow-up checks by WMSC personnel show that this line has not been recorded for a prolonged period. We're also aware that other communications recordings that are made in the JGB ROC are not properly labeled and that other phone calls are showing as occurring, but without the actual recording being available. Combined, these recording deficiencies have confused and delayed safety investigations. This is particularly troublesome as the ROC has been operating exclusively from JGB due to renovations in progress at the Carmen Turner facility near New Carrollton. The WMSC identified recording deficiencies on our ROC audit issued in 2020 and in our power restoration order issued earlier this year. Metrorail has open requirements and corrective action plans related to this, including C0051. Although the WMSC has confirmed that power operations center lines are now being recorded, we continue to be concerned with that without complete recordings, Metrorail is unable to fully investigate and learn from safety events. We are also investigating a red signal overrun that occurred on December 6th on the Blue, Orange, and Silver Line tracks. Based on communications during and after the event and the investigative interview, the train operator did not know where they were in the system. A rail controller gave the train operator a protective block to the end of the Smithsonian Station platform. the train operator did not recognize that they were at Smithsonian Station and moved past the red signal after servicing the station, continuing on to Federal Triangle. This created the risk of a collision with workers as the signal was red to protect a work crew in the interlocking. Metrorail had just certified this train operator for the first time the week before the event. The apparent confusion for even a train operator that Metrorail had just released from training is another example of the need for improvements to this training, including the implementation of physical characteristics training as required under a corrective action plan that Metrorail is implementing to address a finding from our rail operations audit issued this spring. Finally, we are continuing to investigate recurring Metrorail remote control issues affecting signals, the power system, and emergency ventilation fans, including repeated losses of communication with remote terminal units. This includes an investigation of a November 16th complete loss of remote control and monitoring of significant parts of the system. This means that the ROC could not monitor the locations of trains, could not control third rail power, and could not activate emergency ventilation fans in the event of an emergency. Similar issues have apparently happened prior to WMSC oversight. Widespread remote control issues also occurred this summer, including particularly lengthy outages at several red, orange, and blue and silver line stations. We expect to bring a final investigative report to you on this November 16th event in the coming months. And of course, we will also continue to examine other related events and systems and any associated Metrorail procedures as part of our other safety oversight work. This concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Dr. Meyer?
I have a question, Chair Hart.
Yes, Commissioner Laube.
You mentioned that the Carbon Turner facility is unavailable at the moment because of renovations. Can you tell us how long that will go on? And then I have a follow-up question on the JGB facility.
I don't have the information currently at hand on how long the Carmen Turner renovation is going to continue. However, I would mention that recently in public statements, Metro has announced plans to consolidate all of its control facilities into a unified facility. So the renovations that are going on right now at CTF may not be the only time that work is being done to relocate the ROC.
So when the ROC is being relocated to the JGB building, do they have identical capabilities, or is it a completely different mode of operation?
The correct answer is somewhere in the middle. It is, as you probably know, an older facility, so it is not identical to Carmen Turner. They have many of the same capabilities, but as I noted in my remarks, we've noticed some differences in recording capability, and other differences have been found in the past. If you want more specific information, I could ask a staff member to comment. And that staff member would be Mr. Quigley, who may also be able to talk about the renovations at CTF.
Thank you.
Yeah, currently, I think December 28th is the date that they're hoping to get back into CTF and have all of the renovations completed. But the differences between JGB and CTF are really just size and layout. The controllers still have the same control over the system and signaling system and things like that. I believe that car maintenance that's usually in the ROC at CTF is not in the ROC at JGB because of the size. So they might have some personnel and departments working in other locations while the ROC is at JGB.
Well, that's interesting. The reason I asked that question was because we did issue an audit on the ROC, and I think we recommended some improvements. And I guess it's important that whatever improvements we recommended for the Carmen Turner facility also be reflected in the backup location, whether it's JGB or a new location. So just something interesting to consider as we move forward. Thank you.
That is definitely something that we continue to communicate to Metro.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Laube. Any other questions for Dr. Meyer from the commissioners? I would like to just note that kudos to you for bird dogging this variety of issues and going after them and taking them to completion. And specifically, I would like to to give you kudos for noting the 30-day continuous service of one of the operators as opposed to stopping with the hours of service rules, just to make sure there was compliance with the rules and going beyond that to make a fatigue determination. So kudos to you for that. Next, we will move on to a status update on orders related to 7,000 series rail cars. Ms. Samara Singha, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. We continue to oversee Metrorail's implementation of its return to service plan. Metrorail has submitted changes to its October 25th plan that will adjust how exactly measurements are recorded, and that will expand the personnel used for this task. Metrorail's plan and the submission of any revisions is required in accordance with the WMSC's December 29th order. The plan continues to be the data-supported plan that aligns with the letter we sent Metrorail on October 17th, providing Metrorail with examples of plans that were supported by the available safety data. We continue to carry out our work based on the available safety data and information. So far, Metrorail has progressed to the second phase of this plan. Over the last month, Metrorail has generally operated between 20 and 37,000 series trains each day in passenger service. We remain concerned about whether Metrorail is fully analyzing and acting upon available safety data as specified in the plan to make continuous safety improvements. This includes our analysis of Metrorail's vehicle-track interaction data demonstrating specific rail cars and locations with a high number of hits that indicate unusual interaction between the vehicle and track systems. We have provided questions to Metrorail about these examples of safety data indications on specific rail cars and track locations. Metrorail established a vehicle and track working group at the WMSC's suggestion under its September 2nd return to service plan, but has not taken advantage of this interdisciplinary group to address known safety information, such as the data I just referenced. The WMSC also continues to review data and analysis from the derailment investigation and will continue to assess this information to determine whether additional or adjusted actions are warranted to safely operate 7,000 series or other rail cars. We continue to get new information, data, and analysis on an ongoing basis. Available information continues to suggest there are multiple contributing factors to this wheel migration on the 7,000 series rail cars. Thank you, and that completes this presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Samara Singha. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Ms. Samara Singha? Okay, seeing none, we will now move on to our next item, which is audits, with an update from Audits and CAPS Program Manager, Mr. Davis Rattick. Mr. Rattick?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Since your last public meeting, we have received Metrorail's technical comments regarding our draft track audit. Our team is carefully reviewing the information provided and also reviewing additional follow-up documents we requested to clarify Metrorail's comment. We expect to issue this report in coming days. Our second audit report of our triennial cycle covers Metrorail's internal safety review program and associated corrective action. We expect to receive and consider any comments from Metrorail by the end of this week. We will then issue a final report in the coming weeks. As with each of our audits, the work on these audits included extensive reviews of Metrorail documents, on-site work such as interviews, and in the case of the track audit, site visits to various parts of the Metrorail system. Our audits assess Metrorail against the relevant criteria such as the requirements of Metrorail's Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan, requirements specified in other Metrorail documents such as SOPs and orders, and regulatory requirements. These audits cover all aspects of Metrorail's Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan over a 3-year period and are designed to proactively identify safety issues. We are completing on-site work and interviews for our structures audit this week. Our team will then review follow-up documents. In the new year, we will conduct on-site work and interviews for our audit of Metrorail's roadway maintenance machine program. Thank you, and that completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Roddick. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Mr. Roddick? Okay, hearing none, we will now take up the next agenda item, which is corrective action plans. Ms. Rhodes?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Since your last public meeting, we have closed 5 CAPs and reviewed a series of Metro Rail CAP proposals. When Metro Rail develops corrective action plans to address the safety deficiencies identified by WMSC findings and recommendations or other issues specified by the WMSC program standard, Metro Rail submits these plans to the WMSC for review and approval. Each CAP is a specific plan to address a safety deficiency, so the proactive identification of these deficiencies by the WMSC and later the resolution of these deficiencies by Metro Rail is part of the continuous safety improvement process. After Metro Rail submits acceptable CAP proposals that will address the safety deficiency, Metro Rail is responsible for implementing its corrective action plans on the schedule documented in the CAP. We conduct our audits and oversight activities on an ongoing basis. This has led to audits which to this point have each included findings being issued every few months. Corrective actions to address each finding typically take months or years to implement, as the CAPs are designed to systemically address issues identified by the finding. CAPs typically also include documentation of implementation prior to closure by the WMSC. The systemic nature of required fixes and the WMSC's detailed ongoing work means that the raw number of open CAPs may increase over time. The existence of CAPs demonstrates the ongoing work toward continuous improvement. Regarding the latest CAP proposals submitted by Metro Rail, we have now approved 2 communications audit CAPs for implementation. Our feedback on the remaining CAPs will be sent to Metro Rail this week. Regarding the order we issued August 4th on automatic train control room inspection, maintenance, and cleaning, the WMSC is reviewing the latest version of the draft CAP. Overall, Metro Rail currently has 127 open WMSC CAPs that it is in the process of implementing. This is in addition to those CAPs that remain under development. The total number of CAPs reflects the areas where the WMSC has identified safety deficiencies as specified in the program standard. This includes Metro Rail not complying with its own requirements, personnel or assets exhibiting an unsafe condition, Metro Rail lacking a rule or procedure, or Metro Rail having an insufficient procedure. This also includes areas where the WMSC has made safety recommendations that Metro Rail is implementing corrective action plans to address. Metro Rail carrying out each of these corrective actions makes Metro Rail safer. Metro Rail's PTASK then specifies that the effectiveness of these mitigations are assessed and improved on through Metro Rail's SMS processes. Even after a CAP is closed, the WMSC also monitors Metro Rail's actions on an ongoing basis through our audit, inspection, and other oversight activities. Since the last public meeting, the WMSC has closed 5 CAPs. These CAPs include C0057, which addressed a 2020 finding related to the high rate of turnover in the Rail Operations Control Center. The CAP included a new exit interview process, improved onboarding practices, and clear communication of expectations to potential applicants from the beginning of the process. Regarding a fitness for duty audit CAP, Metro Rail has implemented safety-sensitive medical exams at the time of hire as required by Metro Rail policy. Prior to closing C0122, the WMSC conducted on-site records verification. We also reviewed 3 quarterly reports showing compliance with the policy. 3 other closed CAPs relate to findings from the automatic train control and signaling audit. C0102 included safety promotion activities for ATC maintenance employees. This included safety stand-downs ahead of Metro Rail's additional safety management system training and rollout. C0103 involved Metro Rail addressing basic interdepartmental coordination and beginning to follow its safety certification requirements as part of its attempts to return to automatic train operation. We continue to oversee Metrorail's work to carry out this process through our safety certification oversight. C0105 involved Metrorail updating its ATC maintenance control policy to address allowable tools and their requirements to ensure safety. This addresses a finding that Metrorail allowed ATC employees to use tools that had not gone through any safety review or approval process. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Rhodes. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Ms. Rhodes?
I have a question, Chair Hart.
Yes, Commissioner Lowry.
Ms. Rhodes, I note that you discussed Metrorail's PTA SP. When we issue a cap or have a finding in an audit, do our findings consistently make their way into Metrorail's safety management system process? Do we know that?
I don't feel capable of answering that question, but I see Sharmila just unmuted. I wonder if she has a thought.
Commissioner Lobby, I'm going to ask you to repeat the question because I'm fearful that I might misinterpret it. So can you repeat the
Well, when we do an audit, we have findings, and basically the findings indicate that there might be a safety issue somewhere. Do these safety issues that we find in our audits, with Metrorail's new PTA SP program and their safety management system process, do these findings that we have where we find a safety issue, do they normally make it into Washington Metro's safety management, hazard analysis?
The corrective action plan, well, let me step back. The finding that prompts the corrective action plan is evaluated and hazard rated. So it is part of the safety management system as it pertains to hazard identification, rating, and mitigation.
So it goes right into the Metrorail's plan then, correct?
It is evaluated based on Metrorail's plan, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Lobby. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners? Okay, hearing none, we will now move on to our next agenda item, which is an update on some of the WMSC's latest activities overseeing Metrorail safety certification process. Mr. Sahu, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Hart. Metrorail's safety certification process is a critical element of Metrorail's safety management system. Consistently identifying hazards and mitigating the likelihood and severity of those hazards in a systematic way as documented in Metrorail's policy and procedures is what provides for the overall safety of the Metrorail system. To achieve this, Metrorail must carry out all elements of its requirements without bypassing any part of this holistic safety process. This work includes Metrorail's safety certification process. We oversee Metrorail's safety certification through field observations, document and data review, and regular meetings with Metrorail, as well as by observing Metrorail safety certification committees and working groups. We are continuing to monitor Metrorail's implementation of interim safety restrictions and other mitigations designated as part of Metrorail's Silver Line Phase 2 safety certification. Other projects that require our concurrence prior to Metrorail activating them in passenger service include the new Potomac Yard infill station and Metrorail's possible initiation of automatic train operation or automatic door operation. Regarding Metrorail's work on automatic train operation and automatic door operation, the WMSC has identified issues and communicated detailed questions for several years. This includes information prior to and within the ATC audit issued on May 2021, additional gaps in Metrorail's efforts, including as it related to test plans and orders in late 2021 and early 2022, and specific safety questions WMSC has continued to raise over the last several months. ATO is the same system Metrorail was designed with, but that few current personnel have operated or maintained. Metrorail's operations have also changed both since the system opened and since Metrorail shut down automatic train operations in 2009. That includes changes related to conducting work and roadway worker protection. ATO is separate from Metrorail's long-term consideration of a modernized signaling system, such as communications-based train control, CBTC. The WMSC's automatic train control and signaling team, as well as my colleagues assisting me in oversight of Metrorail's safety certification process, continue our careful oversight and consistent communication with Metrorail. This includes issues related to Metrorail's possible schedule and sequencing of testing, training, technology upgrades and adjustments, rule and procedure reviews, and other intensive work needed if Metrorail chooses to continue pursuing the activation of ATO in all parts of the system. This is a significant effort that requires Metrorail ensure its entire organization is ready for such a change to activate these features for the first time in the current environment. Metrorail's documentation provided to the WMSC states that WMATA believes the benefit of implementing ATO, automatic train operation, for the first time since 2009 would be a possible reduction in rail car maintenance and repair requirements. ATO would also make rides more comfortable for riders with smoother braking when stopping at stations. Metrorail's current plan would be to require train operators to change to automatic operation at the start of each rush hour, then from automatic operation to manual operation at the end of each rush hour period. Metrorail's current plan would require additional new software changes that have not yet been developed and procedural steps by those in the Rail Operations Control Center. Metrorail's documentation states that WMATA believes the safety benefit of implementing automatic door operation would be a reduction in instances of doors opening on the wrong side of the train. So far this year, there have been 8 instances of wrong side door openings. The automatic door operation setting Metrorail is considering is designed to have the train doors automatically open when the train is properly berthed at the platform, but then have the train operator manually close the doors. We are awaiting further information and responses from Metrorail to our latest questions and concerns that we communicated on November 18th. Another major project that Metrorail is continuing its safety certification work on is the Potomac Yard Station. This is also a project we have designated as undergoing an in-depth WMSC review of Metrorail's safety certification process, and that therefore requires our concurrence that Metrorail has completed its process before Metrorail opens the station to riders. Potomac Yard is an infill station Metrorail is building on the blue and yellow lines in Alexandria, along with associated new track and systems. The track and some systems opened last month after Metrorail completed the necessary safety certification work on those systems. The WMSC concurred with Metrorail's temporary use notice, or TUN. The WMSC's concurrence with the temporary use notice was required because this is a project undergoing WMSC in-depth review. We will follow Metrorail's continued safety certification of the Potomac Yard project and continue to raise any issues as they are identified. Metrorail is required to receive WMSC's concurrence with the safety certification process before opening the station to passengers. As a last note, we have continued to maintain awareness of Metrorail work on potential automated wayside inspection systems, AWIS. These are the updated systems Metrorail began installing earlier this year before pausing most work on these systems. As we communicated earlier this year, we are reviewing the first location for our concurrence, and Metrorail will follow that same validation and examination process for the other 7 sites. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Sahu. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Mr. Sahu?
I have a question, Chair Hart.
Yes, Commissioner Lowry.
Mr. Sahu, are there target dates, Metrorail target dates associated with either the return to ATO and the opening of the additional station, or are these totally driven by the safety certification process?
Yes, so the safety certification process is a major driving force, major input. Obviously, that has to be, the package has to be complete, sent to us. We have to, we review it. If everything is fine, give the concurrence. So, I mean, tentatively, we're looking at probably second quarter of next year for potentially the infill station opening. It could happen earlier, but I think the dates are in fluctuation right now. And then for return to ATO during those rush hour, again, first quarter of next year. But there's a lot of variables in play.
So we're looking at ATO, beginning sometime January, February, March next year. Is that correct?
That's tentatively what WMATA is looking at, but nothing's obviously definitive.
Okay, thank you very much.
Commissioner Lobby, I would like to underscore the fact that the timeframes that are captured in whatever schedules we've had an opportunity to see from Metro really are not connected to the questions that we've raised as recently as November 18th. There are multiple questions that we have raised that we are waiting for answers on, which are integral and very much interdependent with the safety certification process. So I would want to make sure that we are all on the same page, that safety certification really is not tied to a time frame. It is all dependent on being able to complete the work as specified and being able to verify that safety certification has been conducted at all phases of the project. So it's really not time dependent. It is outcome dependent.
Yes, certainly that's true. And I understand the safety certification process is very important, and there's a lot of moving pieces in returning to automatic train operation. This issue of returning to automatic train operation has been discussed for a number of years, probably every year since 2009, when the last time they operated that way. But I'm sure that Metro Rail has some targets here, and will push to make sure that the safety certification process, meets that target. So the reason I asked the question was to understand, basically the workload on our staff and the Washington Metro staff to get these issues identified and resolved. I know it's very difficult, and probably there will be potential delays, but was more interested in what Washington Metro's expectations were on these projects. So thank you for that information.
And just to underscore, I'll say that although we don't expect ATO to be returned in the very near term, certainly not in the next few months, we absolutely stand ready to work with Metro to ensure that we all get adequate answers to the questions that rely, and that reasonable and effective timetables are developed. But the safety certification work will get done. It's not going to get pushed to meet targets, and while we may not expect ATO in the very near term, we certainly will be providing updates to the commissioners, and we'll be with Metro hand in glove as this moves forward.
Let me ask one follow-up question. Is there any, I know that Metro Rail seems to be talking about rolling this out incrementally. Are there subsets of this that might come before for other items, or it may be too early to discuss, but things such as door openings, automatic door openings, is that?
The answer is almost certainly yes. It's going to be phased, probably both in terms of functionality and geography, but I think it is too early to talk in specific details. There's a lot. We've got a long list of questions that are pending.
Okay, we'll leave it at that.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Lobby. Let me add at a very high level that in the automobile industry, the motor vehicle industry, they significantly underestimated the amazing challenges they were going to have in automating, and have missed the estimated dates when automation would come to the streets by quite a ways. And I think it's still a long ways away. So I won't be surprised if there's underestimation of the challenges associated here as well. So stay tuned for that. So thank you for the question. Are there any other questions from any of the other commissioners? From Mr. Sahu? Okay, hearing none, we will now move on to safety event investigation reports that are being presented today. We will hear presentations on all of the reports, then consider a single motion on all the reports that we are prepared to adopt. If any commissioner wishes to remove a report from the group that will be considered for adoption in a single vote, please indicate that at the end of the presentation of that report. Investigation Program Manager Adam Quigley will present our first reports. Mr. Quigley.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Several of the investigation reports today relate to evacuations for life safety reasons. These are classified by federal regulation and the WMSC program standard as accident level events requiring reports. The first report today, Whiskey 0189, relates to an evacuation for life safety reasons at Boston Station on August 11th of this year. We will present the other evacuation reports for your consideration in a few minutes. On August 11th, 2022, toxic gas from overheated Metro Rail batteries filled part of the Boston Station. These batteries support the uninterruptible power supply, or UPS, for the station's train control room. Initially, a fire alarm was activated around 9:15 p.m. The station manager and personnel in the Rail Operations Control Center saw this alarm. The Arlington County Fire Department responded and later determined that it was not a fire, but instead was gas coming from the battery room at the southeast end of the station. The fire department waited about 20 minutes to enter the room while waiting for Metro Rail personnel with a key. The fire department then decided to force the door open. Metro Rail policy limits access to keys to traction power and battery rooms for safety reasons. The Metro Rail personnel involved in the response did not know about the battery safety switch outside the room that can be used to cut power. After entering the room, Arlington County Fire upgraded the response to a hazmat response. This was 47 minutes after the initial alarm. At that point, responders communicated that trains should bypass the station and riders should be evacuated for their safety. However, during the time the station was evacuated and closed to riders for their safety, one train stopped at and serviced the station, placing riders in hazardous condition. In addition, Metro Rail did not follow its emergency response process. This includes the incident command process. Information was also not consistently and clearly shared. After the evacuation, rail controllers made general announcements for some trains to turn off environmental systems when bypassing Boston Station. These were made on Ops 4 radio channel that covers the area from Clarendon to Points West. No similar announcements regarding the environmental system or bypassing the Boston Station were made on Ops 2 channel used by trains on this line from Points East to Clarendon. Despite those trains moving into Ops 4 area and arriving at Boston just a few stations later. The train operator who serviced Boston Station during the evacuation was in the Ops 2 radio territory when the announcements were made on Ops 4. The Ops 2 rail controller made an announcement on their channel only after the train operator serviced the station during the evacuation. As for the cause of the toxic gas, the investigation shows that Metro Rail had kept the UPS in service beyond the end of its useful life, allowing it to run to failure. The battery charger was not working properly. This led to excess energy being fed into the batteries. In addition, the ventilation unit in the room was not operating correctly, and the separate exhaust fan was also not working. The batteries overheated. System data indicates the toxic gas release began approximately 15 hours after the improper charging began. The acid in each battery began to boil. The WMSC had raised similar ancillary room maintenance concerns to Metro Rail in the spring and further documented these issues in our August 4th, 2022 train control room order, the week prior to this event. Metro Rail had committed in the spring to special inspections of ancillary rooms for these types of ventilation system deficiencies, but had not continued those inspections until after the WMSC's order. Metro Rail did not activate the separate tunnel ventilation fans in the station until about an hour after the initial alarm. Metro Rail opened the battery disconnect to separate the batteries from the UPS at about 12:30 a.m. The battery bank later cooled down and stopped emitting the toxic gas. The power cutoff was delayed due to an unclear labeling of cutoffs and insufficient training and communication of actions to take and emergencies related to battery supplied systems. The probable cause of this event was Metrorail's ineffective maintenance and monitoring of equipment integral to safety, such as battery chargers and exhaust fans. Contributing to the inadequate response to this event was Metrorail's insufficient safety promotion. Metrorail installed a temporary charger and generator to maintain power due to the damaged systems. Metrorail replaced smoke detectors in the room and the UPS. The new UPS was connected to temporary batteries. Metrorail ordered a new exhaust fan and repaired the ventilation system. Metrorail is developing a safety campaign for power personnel regarding battery safety and the safety switch usage during response to emergency incidents. Metrorail is developing a labeling system to identify key power cutoff switches in all stations. Metrorail is developing a training guide for new power personnel on proper methods of power de-energization of battery sourced locations in emergency situations. In addition, Metrorail is in the process of implementing corrective action plans related to emergency and incident response to address findings of our emergency management and fire and life safety programs audit issued in February 2022. Metrorail also committed to addressing deficiencies in communication to train operators moving from one radio channel area to another in response to a prior evacuation event at Pentagon Station. The scheduled completion date for these changes is March 31st. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Mr. Quigley?
I have a question, Chair Hart.
Yes, Commissioner Lobby.
Just a general question, Mr. Quigley. Are we confident that Metrorail is taking all the steps required to correct the deficiencies, the many deficiencies that were found in this accident investigation?
Yes, sir. Just not through the RCAs that are you see in this investigation, but through our orders, our direct orders and requirements that we have with those as well.
Okay, and one follow-up question. The operators are instructed to switch off the environmental systems when they go through a station that has smoke, or I guess hazmat in this case. Do we know if that was consistently done with the trains that did pass through the station?
I believe so, sir. I mean, unless we pulled the event recorder for each train that went through there to verify. I mean, I can't give you, an accurate or,
okay,
100% answer.
But the one train that did service the platform, they left their environmental systems on. Is that the understanding?
Yes, they were not notified or informed of the procedure to follow, after departing the station or entering the station, as I should say.
And again, Washington Metro was addressing that issue also, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Labby. I'm curious about the power cutoff button that's outside the room. That's a great idea, so that if you can't find the key, then you can still disconnect the power. And I'm just wondering, do you happen to know if that's a system-wide implementation, or is that unique somehow to some of the rooms, or what do you know about how widespread that implementation is?
Well, those switches are available outside of these, power rooms or battery system rooms. The issue here was that most of the employees were not aware of this or how to use it, and that's what WMATA is working on right now to make sure everybody understands, how to use these switches and where to locate them.
So is that part of the training or in a manual somewhere, or how?
Yes, it was part of one of the recommended actions that WMATA is working on and completed. I think they just completed where they did lessons learned and retrained their employees on the switches, and they went back and labeled all the switches correctly to help these employees locate them.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners for Mr. Quigley regarding this report? Okay, excuse me, hearing none. Mr. Quigley, would you please present the next report?
Yes, sir. The investigation Whiskey 0190 relates to a derailment at New Carrollton Station, August 29th of this year. A flat car derailed during the long-term shutdown of this part of the Orange Line this summer. A vehicle operator was contacted via cell phone by the mobile command for the area, a Metrorail construction inspector who was at Landover Station. The Metro Rail inspector directed the contractor vehicle operator to move the consist backward toward New Carrollton Station to allow other units to cross over and interlocking. The direction was contrary to the Metro Rail temporary order governing the summer shutdown, which required these vehicle movements to be coordinated through one of the contractor supervisors. The movement was in reverse, with the high rail vehicle pushing a flat car toward New Carrollton Station. The vehicle operator made this move as directed without a flag person present on the flat car to verify switch alignment. The flat car went over a switch that was clamped in the reverse position, which did not align with the operator's intended move. This caused the wheels on the flat car to lift off the rails. The vehicle operator applied brakes and reported the derailment. Later investigation found the switch had been clamped by Metro Rail automatic train control maintenance mechanic at the request of Mobile Command for an earlier move that never occurred. There was no direction to realign the switch for this move. The flat car was later re-railed and removed from service for further investigation. Inspections of the switch and track infrastructure found no damage. The probable cause of this event was Metro Rail's inadequate oversight of its contractors and Metro Rail's acceptance of noncompliance with written rules and procedures. Metro Rail conducted a review of track movement policy with all equipment operators, and the WMATA construction inspector was retrained on procedures and prevention. That completes his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Quigley regarding this report?
Surprisingly, Chair Hart, I have a question on this.
I am surprised. Go ahead, Commissioner Lobby.
I just wanted to know, this is a accident that, or an incident that involved a contractor. How does Metro Rail deal with contractors that don't comply with the requirements? Do they decertify them? Do they fine them? Do they tell them, you can't have any more contracts? I mean, how do they interact with these contractors?
I do not know how they interact, after, an event like this. This contractor seems to be usually running all the WMATA shutdowns, and I would say they have a pretty good track record of having a derailment or a serious, event that's reportable, FTA reportable in the last few shutdowns. So conversations that we should probably start having with WMATA, because it seems like it's a reoccurring thing with this certain contractor.
Yeah, I would think there would have to be at some point you would say a contractor isn't qualified to do certain work if they continue to have issues. But that relationship between Metro Rail and the contractor, I think, is maybe one that we might want to look at a little bit closer, because Metro Rail is responsible for what the contractors do on their property. And I don't know if there's any downside to having these accidents other than saying, whoops, sorry, we screwed up. But I think that would be interesting.
I mean, and just to add, they were instructed, to make that move by a WMATA employee. So I will say what we are looking at more so, not really at the contractor, but the ACS territory, the shutdown territories, where it seems that there's the contractors following their own rules, but there's a mix of WMATA employees, and I think there needs to be some clear instructions on what rules and procedures should be followed, because typically an ACS shutdown with a contractor, WMATA's approach is, well, it's their location, our rules don't apply. So, but when you start adding Metro Rail employees into the mix, I guess you can understand why it's a little bit confusing and concerning at the same time.
Yeah, I'm sure it's confusing. It reminds me of when I was in high school and I had a psychology course, and the question was, if somebody told you to jump off a bridge, would you do it? I mean, the contractor is told to do something unsafe. I don't know that they have any recourse to say, no, that's unsafe, or that's not per the procedures, and refuse to do it. But certainly certainly the contractor can be another checks and balance to make sure that these processes and procedures that are designed to keep everybody safe are followed. But I don't know how the contractors operate. I know on some of the other railroads, contractors are certified and are trained, and if they don't comply with the requirements of the railroad, they're not allowed on the property anymore. And I don't know that Washington Metro has such a program, but maybe something to look at. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Lobby. Any questions from any of the other commissioners for Mr. Quigley for this report? Okay, hearing none, the next report will be given by Investigations Analyst Natalie Quiroz. Ms. Quiroz?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0191 relates to a serious injury at Largo Town Center Station, which is now called Downtown Largo Station, on July 28th. An elevator escalator technician's right middle finger was partially amputated. The technician was working alone to reinstall a metal landing plate on an escalator after replacing one step on an escalator at the station entrance. The technician said they were not issued a special tool used to remove and replace landing plates more safely. Landing plates are the pieces at the top and bottom of the escalators that you step on as you step on or off the moving escalator. When the technician was putting those plates back, the second plate fell into a hole as the technician was holding it. This sheared the technician's finger. In an investigative interview, the technician said they were rushing through this work to ensure they would have time to complete a second separate assignment they had been given for the shift. The technician called an assistant superintendent, who then instructed a supervisor to go to the station. The supervisor assisted the technician to the hospital. More than 2 hours after the injury, the supervisor contacted the Elevator and Escalator Operations Center to report the injury. This is a separate call center that dispatches and receives information from Ellis personnel. The assistant superintendent, supervisor, and Ellis Operations Center did not report this event to anyone in the Rail Operations Control Center until approximately 6 hours after it occurred. The supervisor stated they were not familiar with safety reporting procedures. The supervisor also did not ensure the technician underwent post-event toxicology testing as required. The Ellis supervisor stated they did not have the necessary form and had not completed one in a while. Metro Rail did not report this accident level event to the WMSC and FTA within 2 hours as required. Metro Rail notified the Maryland Occupational Safety and Health Office the following day. WMATA conducted pinch points and hand injuries prevention toolbox talks with Ellis personnel. WMATA will review the current process for communicating injuries and emergencies. WMATA will review the need to develop a work instruction, training, or bulletin to address how to properly remove and reinstall landing plates. Ellis Operations Center will streamline communication regarding injuries and emergencies with the ROCC. Metro Rail is in the process of implementing corrective action plans to address the WMSC audit findings regarding elevator and escalator procedures and drug and alcohol testing. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Quiroz. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Ms. Quiroz? Thank you. Hearing none. Mr. Quigley, would you please present the final 3 reports of the day?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigations Whiskey 0192, 193, and 194 relate to evacuations for life safety reasons in July 2022. The investigation Whiskey 0192 relates to evacuations of Building B at Greenbelt Rail Yard on July 11th and 12th. At 1:12 p.m. on July 11th, a car maintenance supervisor reported a smell of gas to the Maintenance Operations Center, which called for Prince George's County Fire and EMS Department response. When the fire department arrived, they reported a slight gas odor, but no gas leak readings on their detection devices. A member of the Metro Rail Plant Department's plumbing unit arrived and was briefed by the fire department. This person did not bring a gas detection device, so could not fully further investigate. Another member of the plant department's plumbing unit was then dispatched. Approximately 4 hours after the initial report, This employee identified a gas leak from a heating and ventilation unit in a mechanical room. This heating unit had no issues reported on its preventive maintenance inspections conducted a month earlier. When the leak was identified, car maintenance requested that fire department return. The building was evacuated. The fire department's further investigation of the mechanical room identified that Metro Rail would need to repair the gas line and valve. Metro Rail made the repairs and pressure tested the unit. Personnel re-entered the building. The following day at 10:42 a.m., a car maintenance supervisor reported a possible gas leak. The building was evacuated. There was confusion regarding who from Metro Rail should respond to the event. Eventually, the plant department's plumbing unit was dispatched. Their response was somewhat delayed due to the need to stop to pick up a gas detection device. After arriving, the fire department and the plant department plumbing unit did not find any gas leak during this second evacuation. A final summary of the work performed by the plant plumber team during this event was not provided when requested by WMATA's safety department during the investigation. Response to emergencies and corrective maintenance work must be documented in accordance with WMATA policy and shared when needed to provide the greatest opportunity for continuous safety improvement. WMATA developed a lessons learned document regarding communications with and regular updates to maintenance operations control during events and documenting actions taken during responses. WMATA will review electronic device policy and guidance documents for communications during event response and make recommendations for improvements. The next investigation, Whiskey 0193, relates to an evacuation of Cleveland Park Station on July 29, 2022, due to a fire by the station's platform escalator. At 11:35 a.m., the station manager reported to the Rail Operations Information Center that a fire alarm was coming from the escalator. The ROI called for DC Fire and EMS response and notified other Metro Rail personnel. The rail controller instructed train operators at Van Ness and Woodley Park stations to hold there so that riders would not be brought into the area with smoke. The station manager saw the fire that appeared to be coming from under the escalator and used a fire extinguisher. Smoke continued to come from the escalator. The rail controller requested fans be activated in the station at 11:43 a.m. The ROIC then directed the station manager to evacuate the station. CCTV shows a person using a lighter near the location of the fire about 5 minutes before the fire became noticeable. It appears that this led to the burning of paper and other combustible debris in the void between the escalator and stairs. This flammable debris included Metro Rail trash from packaging material that Metro Rail did not properly discard when the escalator was installed. WMATA closed the gap between the escalator and the staircase. WMATA conducted a system audit to identify locations where there is a gap between the escalator housing and the stairs. Once identified, the gaps were closed. The last report before you today is investigation Whiskey 0194. This relates to an evacuation for life safety reasons of Mount Vernon Square Station on July 18th, 2022. This evacuation was due to a bomb threat reported by Metro Transit Police. Nothing was found and the station reopened. Thank you. This completes the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Quigley? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt the 6 investigation reports that have just been presented?
So moved.
So moved, Commissioner Bob. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Al-Khatib. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay. Yay.
Yay. Yay.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Chair Hart, the vote is 6-0 and the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We will now move on to the next item on our agenda, which is resolutions. The resolution on our agenda today relates to the annual independent financial audit and associated report covering fiscal year 2022. I would like to thank Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke for her role in this process, and I would also like to thank our staff for their hard work, both on an everyday basis to ensure that we are meeting all requirements, and as part of the audit process to provide the necessary information and documentation. We are proud of our staff for carrying out their work in such a professional and efficient manner. The commissioners have had an opportunity to review this audit report. Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. We're very proud of our staff and our commissioners for this audit that includes an unmodified or clean opinion on the WMSC's financial statements through the end of our fiscal year last June, that the statements are fairly presented in conformance with generally accepted accounting principles. The auditors concluded that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the WMSC. This annual audit is required by the WMSC Compact and upon adoption will be transmitted as required. The Finance and Operations Committee provided oversight of this independent work and recommends commission adoption.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke?
Mr. Chair,
Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt resolution R 2022-05, adopting the fiscal year 2022 independent financial audit?
Mr. Chairman, I recommend that we approve the audit, and compliments to David and our CFO and our staff, as our chairman indicated, for excellent work in getting our financial house in order. So I recommend we approve this.
Thank you, Commissioner Bob. I will take that recommendation as a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Rush. Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay. Yay.
Yay.
All opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Chair Hart, the vote is 6-0 and the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. That completes our business for today. As a reminder, you can always report any concerns through our website, wmsc.gov, through our social media channels like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or by email. I would like to thank Dr. Meyer and his staff for all of their hard work to continuously improve the safety of MetroRail, and I would like to thank them for their presentations for this meeting. I would also like to thank the commissioners for being so engaged in the process and for being so engaged in this meeting. And finally, I would like to thank the members of the public who attended the meeting. We expect to hold our next public meeting on January 24th, 2023. We look forward to seeing you then, and meanwhile, happy holidays and happy New Year. Is there any further business? Hearing none, this meeting is hereby adjourned.